The sky turned dark on a summer afternoon in 2147. People all around the world stopped what they were doing and looked up. 17 enormous ships were descending through the clouds. Each ship was larger than any city on Earth. They were made of something that looked like crystal. Glowing with soft blue and purple light, Lisa Grant was working at the United Earth Defense Force, headquarters in Geneva, when the ships appeared. She was a commander with 30 years of experience. She had seen many strange things in her career, but nothing had prepared her for this. She stood in front of the main display screen, watching the alien vessels take positions around the planet. They moved slowly, carefully, like a mother arranging a blanket around a sleeping child. Within an hour, they had formed a complete sphere around Earth. Admiral Kevin Price walked up beside her. He was her commanding officer, an older man with gray hair and a face lined with worry. He looked at the screen and shook his head slowly. "First contact," he said quietly. "I always wondered if it would happen in my lifetime." Lisa did not respond. She was studying the formation of the alien ships. Something about it bothered her. They were not positioned like a fleet preparing for attack. They were positioned like guards standing around a prison. The first message came 2 hours later. The alien who appeared on their screens was tall and thin, with skin that glowed softly like moonlight reflecting on water. His eyes were large and deep, filled with what seemed like kindness and wisdom. He introduced himself as High Protector Zolrith. "People of Earth," Zolrith said in a voice that was calm and gentle, "do not be afraid. We are the Velanthi. We have watched your world for many of your centuries. We have seen you grow from simple creatures into a species that dreams of reaching the stars. We are very proud of what you have become." Around the world, billions of people watched and listened. Many of them felt tears running down their faces. They were not alone in the universe. Someone out there cared about them. "But the universe is a dangerous place," Zolrith continued. "There are things among the stars that you cannot imagine. There are empires that consume entire worlds for fuel. There are machine intelligences that see biological life as nothing more than raw material. There are horrors that would destroy your civilization in a single day." He paused, and his expression became even more gentle. "We have come to protect you from these dangers. Under our guidance, you will be safe. You will grow and develop at your own pace, without fear of the darkness between the stars. This is our gift to you." The world erupted in celebration. People danced in the streets of every city. Religious leaders called it the greatest miracle in history. Scientists talked excitedly about what they could learn from beings who had traveled across the galaxy. Politicians made speeches about a new era of peace and hope. But Lisa Grant did not celebrate. She stayed in the command center, watching and thinking. "Something is wrong," she said to Kevin. He looked at her with surprise. "Wrong? This is the greatest day in human history. Look at their formation." Lisa pointed at the display. "They are not positioned to defend us from outside threats. They are positioned to surround us completely. Every possible route out of Earth's orbit is blocked." Kevin studied the display for a long moment. Then he shook his head. "You are reading too much into it? They just arrived. Give them time." Time only proved Lisa right. In the months that followed, the Velanthi began making changes. Small changes at first, always presented with kindness and reason. Human ships were no longer allowed to travel past Mars. It was for safety, the Velanthi explained. There were dangers in the outer solar system that humans were not ready to face. When some ships tried to go anyway, the Velanthi stopped them. Their crystal vessels moved with impossible speed, appearing in front of human ships before they could react. The humans were turned back gently, but firmly. No one was hurt, but everyone understood the message. Next came the monitoring of communications. The Velanthi needed to watch for signs of dangerous species trying to contact Earth. This meant listening to every message that humans sent or received. Every phone call, every email, every private conversation was now observed by alien ears. Then the Velanthi began visiting research facilities. Scientists who were working on certain types of technology received friendly visits from Velanthi advisors. Some research was deemed too dangerous and had to stop. The scientists who refused were relocated to special facilities, where they could continue their work under supervision. No one ever saw those scientists again. Dr. Nathan Cole was a physicist, working at a laboratory in California. He was brilliant, one of the smartest people on Earth. His team had been working on a new way to travel through space, a method that could move ships faster than light itself. They were about to announce their discovery to the world. The Volanthi came the next morning. 3 of them, tall and glowing, walked into Nathan's laboratory with smiles on their faces. They praised his intelligence and creativity. They said his work was remarkable. Then they told him it had to stop. The research was too dangerous. It had to be destroyed, Nathan argued. He begged. He explained that his discovery could help humanity explore the stars. The Volanthi listened patiently, their expressions never changing. Then they repeated that the research was too dangerous. They were sorry, but it was for humanity's own good. That night, Nathan received a message from someone he did not know. The message contained only 2 words and a set of coordinates. Run now. Nathan ran. He took nothing except the data drives containing his research. He drove through the night, not knowing where he was going or who had sent the message. All he knew was that something was very wrong. Staying meant losing everything he had worked for. The coordinates led him to an old mining facility in the mountains of Colorado. The entrance was hidden, covered by rocks and dead trees. Nathan almost missed it, but when he found his way inside, he discovered that he was not alone. Lisa Grant was waiting for him in a chamber deep underground. She had left her position in the military 6 months earlier. Officially, she had retired for health reasons. In truth, she had been building something in secret. "Welcome, Dr. Cole," she said. "I am sorry about your laboratory, but I am glad you escaped." Nathan looked around at the underground facility. It was rough and poorly lit, nothing like the advanced laboratories he was used to. But it was hidden from Volanthi sensors, and that made it the most valuable place on Earth. "What is happening?" Nathan asked. "What are the Volanthi really doing?" Lisa's face was grim. "They are not protecting us. They are controlling us. I have spent months studying their communications, decoding their messages. They have done this before, to hundreds of other species across the galaxy." She showed him images on an old screen. Other worlds, other species, all of them visited by the Volanthi. All of them protected and guided and controlled. "What happened to those species?" Nathan asked. "They stopped being themselves. The Volanthi changed them generation by generation. They removed everything that made them unique. Their creativity, their ambition, their desire to explore. They turned them into quiet, obedient creatures who never questioned anything." Nathan felt cold despite the warm underground air. And if a species refuses to change? Lisa was quiet for a moment. "There is a phrase in their communications. They call it being returned to potential. I do not know exactly what it means. But none of those species exist anymore." Nathan understood now why he had been told to run. He understood why Lisa was hiding in the dark. The Volanthi were not protectors. They were jailers. And humanity was their newest prisoner. "What can we do?" he asked. Lisa smiled, and there was something fierce in her eyes. "We fight. We learn their technology. We find their weaknesses. And when the time is right, we show them what humans can do when someone tries to put us in a cage." Aside, far above them, the Volanthi ships continued their endless patrol. They believed their protection was complete. They believed humanity would learn to obey. They had no idea what was coming. 5 years had passed since the Volanthi arrived. The world above had changed in ways that most people did not notice. Cities were cleaner. Diseases were easier to cure. Violence was rare. On the surface, life under Volanthi protection seemed good. But beneath the mountains of Colorado, tunnels that stretched for miles underground, a different story was unfolding. The resistance had grown from a handful of people hiding in an abandoned mine to a network that spanned every continent on Earth. They called themselves the Prometheus Network. Named after the ancient story of a god who stole fire from heaven to give to humans, Lisa Grant walked through the main corridor of their underground base. The walls were rough stone, lit by strings of lights that the engineers had rigged together from salvaged parts. It was not pretty, but it was home to over 300 people who had chosen freedom over comfort. She found Nathan Cole in his laboratory, surrounded by pieces of Valenthi technology. Over the years, the Resistance had collected fragments from crashed drones, abandoned equipment, and daring raids on Valanthi supply stations. Nathan had studied these fragments until he understood them better than anyone else on Earth. "I have good news," Nathan said when he saw her. His eyes were red from lack of sleep, but his voice was excited. "I finally understand how they keep us trapped." He pulled up a display that showed Earth surrounded by an invisible web of energy. "This is the containment grid. It operates on frequencies that our instruments cannot normally detect. Even if we somehow got past their ships, this grid would stop us from leaving the solar system." Lisa studied the display carefully. "Can we break it?" "Maybe. The grid depends on perfect coordination between all 17 ships. Each ship generates a piece of the whole. If we could disrupt them all at the same time, the entire grid would collapse." This was the breakthrough they had been waiting for. Lisa had always known that fighting the Valanthi directly was impossible. Their technology was too advanced, their ships too powerful. But if they could find a weakness, a single point where the right attack could bring everything down, then maybe they had a chance. Maria Santos arrived at the base that evening. She had been a diplomat before the arrival, working to build relationships between nations. Now she used those same skills to coordinate resistance cells around the world. She was small and quiet, with dark hair that was starting to show streaks of gray. But her mind was sharp, and she noticed things that others missed. "I have been monitoring Valanthia communications," Maria said during their meeting that night. "They are planning something new. They call it the Harmony Initiative." "What does that mean?" Lisa asked. Maria's expression was troubled. "They want to modify human genetics, make us calmer, more cooperative, less likely to question authority. They have already started in some hospitals. Babies are being born with subtle changes to their DNA." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. The Valanthi were not content to simply control humanity from the outside. They wanted to change what humans were from the inside. In a few generations, the species that had dreamed of reaching the stars would become something else entirely. Something safe and peaceful and empty. "We need more people," Nathan said finally. "More scientists, more engineers. The technology to break the containment grid exists, but building it will take everything we have." Over the following months, new members arrived at the underground base. Each one had escaped the Valanthi in their own way. Each one brought skills that the Resistance desperately needed. Dr. Angela Martinez came from Texas. She was a neurologist who had spent 20 years studying how the human brain worked. When the Valanthi began using devices to monitor human thoughts and emotions, Angela had figured out how they functioned. More importantly, she had figured out how to fool them. Their sensors look for specific patterns of brain activity, Angela explained to the group. But if you know what patterns they are looking for, you can make them see whatever you want. I can make devices that will hide our thoughts from them completely. Christopher Lee was the youngest member of the Resistance. He was only 18 years old, but he had been working with computers since he was a child. The Valanthi had tried to relocate him when he was 15, recognizing his talent as potentially dangerous. His parents had hidden him with the Resistance instead. "Their computer systems are not as secure as they think," Christopher said with the confidence of youth. "I have found ways into their networks. I can track their patrol patterns, read their messages, even send false information if we need to." Daniel Kim was an engineer whose younger sister had been taken in the first wave of relocations. He had spent 3 years searching for any information about what had happened to her. He never found any. The Valanthi had simply made her disappear. "I do not care about being safe anymore," Daniel said when he arrived at the base. "I care about making sure no one else has to feel what I feel every day." And then there was Victor Hernandez. Victor confused everyone at first. He had been a construction worker before the arrival. He had no scientific training, no military background, no special education. But Lisa had heard about him from contacts in the Resistance. They said he had a gift that could not be taught. Victor spent his first weeks at the base simply watching. He observed the scientists working on Valanthi technology. He studied the displays showing how the containment grid functioned. He asked questions that seemed simple but made people think in new ways. Then one day, he walked up to the main display and pointed at the 17 points where the containment grid connected to the Volanthi ships. "You are thinking about this wrong," Victor said. "You want to attack the grid, but the grid is not the weakness. The connections are the weakness." Nathan looked at him with confusion. "What do you mean?" Victor picked up a marker and drew on the wall. The Volanthi build everything to work together. Every system connects to every other system. They think that makes them strong. But it also means that if you break the right connection, everything falls apart at once. He drew lines between the 17 points, showing how they were linked. Hit all 17 at exactly the same time. Not to destroy them, but to confuse them. Make each point send wrong information to all the others. The more connected they are, the faster the problems will spread. Nathan stared at the diagram for a long moment. Then his eyes went wide. He is right. Their strength is their weakness. If we can create chaos at all, 17 nodes simultaneously, the cascade failure would spread through their entire system. Lisa felt hope rise in her chest. They had been searching for a strategy for 5 years. Now a construction worker with no formal training had found it in a few weeks. How long will it take to prepare? She asked. Nathan thought carefully. 3 years? Maybe longer. We need to build 17 strike vessels. We need to train crews who can fly them. We need to create weapons that can disrupt Volanthi systems. And we need to time everything perfectly. If we are off by even a few seconds, the whole plan fails. Then we start today, Lisa said. She looked around at the faces of her people. Scientists and soldiers, young and old, from every part of the world. They had nothing but courage and determination. Against them stood an empire that had controlled the galaxy for millions of years. But Lisa knew something that the Volanthi did not understand. Humans had been fighting against impossible odds since the beginning of their existence. They had survived ice ages and plagues and wars that should have destroyed them. They had climbed out of the darkness again and again, refusing to give up no matter how hopeless things seemed. The Volanthi had protected hundreds of species. Every one of those species had eventually surrendered. None of them had been human. 3 years, Lisa said. Then we show them what happens when you try to cage humanity. 3 years of preparation had finally come to an end. In the deepest part of the underground base, 17 ships stood ready in a hidden hangar. They were small and ugly compared to Volanthi vessels. They were built from stolen parts, recycled metal, and pure determination. But they would fly. And they would carry humanity's hope to the stars. Lisa Grant walked slowly through the hangar, looking at each ship. The Resistance had given them names, hope, defiance, freedom, dawn. Simple words that meant everything to the people would fly them. The crews were already gathering, checking their equipment and saying quiet goodbyes to friends who would stay behind. Each ship would carry 12 people. That meant 204 volunteers who understood that they might never come home, Nathan. Cole approached Lisa with a tablet showing final calculations. He had aged in the past 3 years. His hair was gray now, and lines of worry marked his face. But his hands were steady as he showed her the numbers. The timing must be perfect, he said. All 17 ships have to strike within 3 seconds of each other. Any longer than that, and the Volanthi will have time to adjust their systems. Lisa nodded. She had heard this many times before. What are our chances? Christopher's calculations say 92%, if everything goes according to plan. But nothing ever goes exactly according to plan. Lisa understood what he was not saying. There was a real chance that everything would fail. That 17 ships and 200 people would be lost for nothing. That the Volanthi would learn about the Resistance and destroy everyone who remained. But there was no other option. The Volanthi genetic programs were moving faster than anyone had expected. Maria had intercepted messages showing that the changes to human DNA were spreading through the population. Every month, more children were born who were a little less curious, a little more obedient, a little less human. In another generation, there might be no one left who wanted to fight. Angela Martinez gathered the crews for a final medical briefing. Her neural blocking devices had been implanted behind each volunteer's ear. The small machines would hide their thoughts from Valanthi's sensors, but they came with side effects. "You may feel strange," Angela warned. "Headaches, confusion, difficulty concentrating. The blockers create interference in your brain that the Valanthi cannot read. But that same interference can affect your own thinking. Stay focused on your training. Trust your instincts." Daniel Kim had modified each ship's engines to run silent. No heat, no energy emissions, nothing that Valanthi's sensors could detect. The ships would travel through space like ghosts. "Follow the paths that Christopher calculated," Daniel told the pilots. "The Valanthi have small gaps in their sensor network. Not many and not large, but big enough for our ships. Stay on course. Any deviation, and they will see you." Victor Hernandez showed the crews the weapons they would use. They did not look impressive. Small devices, no bigger than a person's hand. But inside each one was technology that would turn the Valanthi's greatest strength into their greatest weakness. When these activate, Victor explained, they will introduce chaos into Valanthi's systems. Wrong data will spread from node to node. Their computers will start arguing with each other. The more connected their systems are, the faster the chaos spreads. Christopher Lee had programmed secondary systems into the weapons. Hidden code that would slip into Valanthi computers and take control from the inside. He was too young to go on the mission himself, but his mind would be fighting alongside every ship. The night before the launch, Lisa called everyone together in the main chamber. 204 volunteers stood in rows, their faces lit by dim emergency lights. Behind them, hundreds more who would stay behind watched in silence. Lisa had never been good at speeches. She preferred action to words. But she knew that these people needed to hear something before they flew into the darkness. "I am not going to tell you that everything will be fine," she began. "I am not going to promise that you will all come home. You deserve better than comfortable lies." She looked at the faces before her. Young people who had never known a world without Valanthi ships in the sky. Older people who remembered what freedom felt like. All of them scared, all of them determined. What we are doing tomorrow has never been done before. No species has ever escaped from Valanthi protection. They have been doing this for millions of years. They have never failed. Lisa paused, letting the weight of those words settle over the room. They think we need to be guided and controlled for our own good. They look at our short history and our simple technology, and they see a species that is not ready to face the universe. Her voice grew stronger. But they do not understand what we are. They do not understand that humans have been fighting against impossible odds since the beginning. We survived when everything said we should die. We reached for the stars when everyone said it was impossible. We never stopped dreaming of something more. Lisa pointed upward, toward the surface, toward the stars beyond. Tomorrow, we prove them wrong. Not just for ourselves, but for every species they have ever controlled. We show the entire galaxy that no cage can hold a species that refuses to be contained. A young pilot near the front raised her hand. "What if we fail?" Lisa met her eyes without flinching. "Then we fail fighting for what matters. That is better than living forever in a cage." At midnight, the hangar doors opened. One by one, the 17 ships rose from their hiding places and slipped into the night sky. They flew low at first, following valleys and riverbeds that hid them from Valanthi sensors. Then, over the open ocean, they climbed toward space. Christopher monitored their progress from the command center, tracking each ship through the gaps in Valanthi's surveillance. His fingers moved constantly over his keyboard, making tiny adjustments to their courses. Team 1 through first checkpoint. Team 2 approaching second waypoint. All ships running silent. Lisa watched the displays, her hands clasped behind her back. Each blinking light was 12 people trusting her with their lives. 12 people who might never see Earth again. For 3 weeks, the ships traveled in silence. No communications, no course corrections, nothing that could reveal their presence. The crews lived on recycled air and concentrated food. Most of their time was spent in sleep pods to save resources. Above Earth, the Valanthi had no idea that anything was wrong. High Protector Zolrath, meditated in his chamber, pleased with how well the protection of humanity was progressing. The genetic programs were ahead of schedule. In another few generations, humans would be perfectly integrated into Volanthi guidance. Another success story in millions of years of protecting young species. He could not see the 17 ships, approaching from 17 different directions. He could not know that everything was about to change. In the command center deep beneath Colorado, Lisa counted down the final hours, then the final minutes, then the final seconds. All teams in position, Christopher reported. His voice was tight with tension. Awaiting your order, Lisa took a deep breath. 8 years of planning. Hundreds of lives at risk. The entire future of humanity hanging on what happened in the next few seconds. All teams, she said into the communication system, execute. Across the solar system, 17 devices activated at exactly the same moment. And nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. High Protector Zolrith had lived for more than 3,000 years. He had protected dozens of species across the galaxy. He had seen young civilizations rise from primitive beginnings to join the great family of Volanthi guidance. In all that time, he had never experienced anything like what was happening now. Alarms filled his command chamber, sounds he had never heard before, not the gentle warning tones that signaled minor problems. These were screaming alerts that meant something had gone terribly wrong. He rushed to the command center of his vessel, his glowing skin flickering with stress. Around him, Volanthi officers worked frantically at their stations, trying to understand what was happening to their systems. Report, Zalreth commanded. The officer at the main console turned to face him. Her expression was something Zalreth had never seen on a Volanthi face before. It was fear. The containment grid is collapsing, she said. All 17 nodes are failing at the same time. The cascade is spreading faster than we can respond. Zalreth stared at the display showing the grid that had protected Earth for 10 years. Point by point, it was going dark. Energy that should have flowed smoothly was spinning out of control. Each failure caused 3 more failures. The damage was spreading like fire through dry grass. This is impossible, Zalroth said. No primitive species could understand our technology well enough to attack it like this. But the evidence was right in front of him. Somehow, the humans had found the weak points in Volanthi systems. They had built weapons designed to exploit those weaknesses. And they had coordinated an attack across billions of kilometers of space with perfect timing. On Earth. The Resistance Command Center erupted in cheering as the containment grid collapsed. For the first time in a decade, the invisible cage around humanity was gone. Lisa Grant allowed herself a small smile, but she knew the fight was far from over. The grid is down, Nathan reported, but their ships are still fully operational. They can still destroy us. As if hearing his words, new alerts appeared on the displays. The Volanthi fleet was moving. All 17 vessels were turning toward Earth. Weapon systems that had been dormant for 10 years were powering up. In his command vessel, Zalroth made his decision. He did not enjoy what he was about to do. He had spent his entire life protecting young species, not destroying them. But humanity had proven itself too dangerous to be protected in the normal way. They would have to be returned to potential. All vessels, he commanded, prepare for pacification protocol. Target the major population centers. We will remove the dangerous elements from the species and begin again with those who survive. Volanthi weapons were terrible things. A single blast could turn an entire city into a crater of melted glass. Together, the 17 ships could end human civilization in less than a day. Lisa had expected this response. They all had. The second phase of the plan was already in motion. Across the Volanthi fleet, strange things began happening. Doors that should have opened stayed closed. Weapons that should have fired refused to respond. Navigation systems that had worked perfectly for centuries suddenly showed impossible readings. Angela Martinez. It's been years studying how Volanthi technology interfaced with living minds. She had learned to block those interfaces, but she had also learned how to use them. Hidden inside Victor's Chaos weapons were secondary systems, designed to infiltrate Volanthi computers from the inside. Christopher Lee had written those programs. For 3 years, he had studied every piece of Volantha code the Resistance could find. He had discovered pathways into their systems that the Volanthi themselves did not know existed. Now his programs were spreading through their networks, corrupting data, issuing false commands, turning their perfect systems into chaos. Victor had been right about the Volanthi. They built everything to connect to everything else. They believed that made their technology strong. But when you poison one part of a connected system, the poison spreads everywhere. One by one, the Volanthi ships went dark. First, their weapons failed. Then their engines. Then their sensors. Emergency power kept life support running, but nothing else. 17 massive vessels that had controlled Earth's sky for 10 years hung motionless in orbit. As helpless as the humans they had tried to protect, Zalreth stood in the dim emergency lighting of his command center. Struggling to understand how this had happened, his species had traveled between stars when humans were still living in caves. They had guided hundreds of civilizations toward peace and harmony. They had never been defeated until now. Lisa Grant's voice came through the communication systems. It was calm and steady, without anger or celebration, just simple words stating a simple truth. This is Commander Lisa Grant of the United Earth Defense Force. Your ships are disabled. Your containment grid is fallen. We do not wish to destroy you. But we will not be caged any longer. Stand down, and we can begin a different conversation. For a long moment, Zalreth did not respond. He was trying to process what had happened. His species had only wanted to help. They had seen humanity's potential for violence and chaos. They had tried to guide them toward something better. But perhaps that had been the mistake. Perhaps you could not guide a species toward peace by taking away their freedom to choose. You do not understand what you have done, Zalreth finally said. The dangers we've protected you from are real. There are things in the galaxy that will not be as kind as we were. Those are our dangers to face, Lisa replied. Not yours to protect us from. We will make our own choices. We will take our own risks. We will face our own consequences. That is what it means to be free. You may not survive. That is our decision to make. Silence stretched across the void between worlds. The Volanthi officers looked to Zalroth, waiting for orders. He could see in their eyes that they were lost. Nothing in their long history had prepared them for this moment. Then, slowly, Zalrath gave the order to power down remaining systems. It was a gesture of surrender, something no protected species had ever seen from the Volanthi before. On Earth, people emerged from their homes and shelters to look up at the sky. The crystal ships that had watched over them for 10 years were dark now, their lights extinguished. For the first time in a decade, humans could look at the stars and see possibilities instead of prison walls. Maria Santos began receiving messages from Resistance. Cells around the world. People were celebrating in every city. They did not fully understand what had happened, but they could feel that something fundamental had changed. Nathan was already planning next steps. The Volanthi technology that had been used to contain humanity could now be studied openly. Their faster-than-light engines could be understood and copied. The galaxy that had been forbidden to humans was now open for exploration. We have much work to do, Nathan said to Lisa. The Volanthi were right about one thing. There are real dangers out there. We need to prepare for them. Lisa nodded. We will. But this time, we face them on our own terms. She looked up at the displays showing Earth surrounded by stars. Those stars had seemed impossibly far away for so long. Now they looked like destinations, places that humanity could reach. The tables had been reversed. The species that had almost been caged forever was now free. And the universe would never look at humanity the same way again. The story of Earth's liberation spread across the galaxy faster than anyone had expected. On distant worlds, in star systems that humans had never heard of, other protected species learned what had happened. A young civilization had broken free from Volanthi control. The Guardians, who had seemed invincible, had been defeated by a species they had dismissed as primitive children. The news changed everything. On a water world called Velenfor, the amphibian species known as the Marsh Singers had lived under Volanthi protection for 6,000 years. They had almost forgotten what independence felt like. But when they heard about humanity's victory, something awakened in them. Within a year, they had begun their own resistance movement. On the crystalline planet Krath, beings made of living stone who had been protected for 12,000 years started asking questions they had never dared to ask before. Why did the Velant have the right to control their development? Who gave them permission to decide what other species could become? One by one, protected civilizations across the galaxy began to wake up. The Velanthi had built their empire on the belief that younger species needed guidance. But humanity had shown that guidance could become a cage, and cages could be broken. Lisa Grant worked tirelessly during the first years after liberation. She helped establish the Free Species Alliance, a coalition of civilizations that rejected the idea of protection through control. Representatives from dozens of worlds traveled to Earth to meet the humans who had shown them what was possible. Lisa was 63 when she finally allowed herself to rest. Her body was worn out from decades of struggle. Her hair had turned completely white, and her steps had become slow. But her eyes still held the same fierce determination that had carried her through the underground years. She died peacefully in her sleep, surrounded by friends and colleagues. Her last words were simple: "We did it. The rest is up to them." Nathan Cole took over the scientific advancement programs. Using knowledge gained from captured Velanthi technology, he led teams that developed new ways to travel between stars. Within 10 years of the liberation, human ships were exploring systems that the Velanthi had never even mentioned. They found wonders beyond imagination. Planets made entirely of diamond, stars that sang with radio waves, civilizations that existed as pure energy, floating through the void between galaxies. Maria Santos became the chief diplomat of the Free Species Alliance. Her job was perhaps the hardest of all. Liberated species often had nothing in common with each other. Some breathed oxygen, some breathed methane, some did not breathe at all. Some were small as insects, others larger than mountains. But Maria found common ground among all of them. They had all known what it felt like to be controlled. That shared experience created bonds stronger than any physical similarity. Daniel. Kim led expeditions to Velanthi detention facilities across the galaxy. He never found his sister. The records showed that she had been among the first humans modified by the genetic programs. Changed so thoroughly that she no longer recognized her own family. Daniel grieved for her, but he also saved thousands of others. Species that had been modified over generations were offered treatments to restore what had been taken from them. Not all chose to change back, but all were given the choice. Christopher Lee built communication networks that connected free species across the galaxy. He designed them to be the opposite of Velanthi systems. Instead of central control, his networks operated on openness and cooperation. No single point could be attacked to bring everything down. The freedom that humanity had fought for was built into the very structure of how the new civilization communicated. Angela Martinez opened medical schools on 100 different worlds. She taught that healing was not about controlling biology, but about understanding it. Her students went on to cure diseases that had plagued species for thousands of years. They did it through knowledge, shared freely, not through guidance imposed from above. Victor Hernandez became a legend. He traveled from world to world, teaching the simple principle that had changed everything. Connected systems have connected weaknesses. The bigger something is, the harder it falls. Simple ideas that anyone could understand. Ideas that empowered species who had been taught to feel helpless. The Velanthi themselves were forced to change. High Protector Zolroth spent years in meditation after Earth's liberation, trying to understand where his species had gone wrong. Eventually, he reached a difficult conclusion. The Velanthi had meant well. They had genuinely wanted to help younger species. But they had confused protection with control, guidance with domination. They had been so certain they knew best that they never asked if other species wanted their help. Some Velanthi could not accept this truth. They retreated to their home systems, refusing to interact with the new order. They believed that without Velanthi guidance, the galaxy would descend into chaos and destruction. Other Velanthi chose a different path. They offered their knowledge and technology to the Free Species Alliance, not as guardians, but as equals. Zalreth was among this group. He worked alongside humans and other species, sharing the wisdom his civilization had gathered over millions of years. But now he listened as much as he spoke. 50 years after the liberation, a human ship called the Horizon reached the center of the galaxy. It was the farthest any Earth vessel had ever traveled. The journey would have been completely impossible under Volanthi protection, Captain. Alina Cruz stood on the observation deck and looked out at the dense clusters of stars surrounding the massive black hole at the galaxy's heart. She was the granddaughter of resistance fighters, born on a free Earth, raised with stories of the liberation. She had never known what it felt like to live in a cage. Captain, her navigator reported, we are detecting signals from hundreds of sources. There are civilizations here that the Volanthi never even knew about. Alina smiled. Out here, far from the worlds the Volanthi had controlled, there were species that had found their own way through the dangers of the universe. They had heard about humanity. They were curious about the species that had overthrown its protectors. Open communication channels, Alina ordered. Let them know we come in peace. We are not here to protect them, or guide them, or control them. We are here to meet them as equals. The first response came within minutes. A species made of pure light, living in the radiation of the galaxy's core. They had watched the Volanthi for millions of years, curious but unimpressed. They had watched humanity for only 50 years. They were very impressed. You are the ones who refused the cage, the light being said. We have been waiting for a species like you. There is much to learn from those who choose their own path. Alina thought about Lisa Grant, who had seen the truth when everyone else was celebrating. She thought about Nathan Cole, who had found the weakness in invincible technology. She thought about all the people who had risked everything so that future generations could stand where she was standing now. Set course for the nearest signal source, Alina ordered. Let us see what else is out there. The ship leaped into faster-than-light travel, carrying humanity's message to the heart of the galaxy. Behind them, Earth continued to thrive. Humans made mistakes, faced dangers, sometimes failed. But they did it on their own terms. They made their own choices about their own future. Across the cosmos, other species were following their example. The age of protection was ending. A new age had begun. It was messier than the Volanthi way. It was more dangerous. But the species that survived were stronger and more creative than any protected civilization had ever been. Humanity reversed the tables. They had gone from being caged to being free, from being protected to protecting themselves. And in doing so, they had changed everything. The universe was vast and dangerous and full of wonders. Humanity was finally free to discover all of it.